Attention, Senators. The legislature is scheduled to reconvene in 5 minutes.
The legislature will now resume. Senator Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is this my last time and then my closing?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to announce for everybody, I got 5 minutes on this, and then I got a 5-minute closing, and then we have a vote. And so you got 10 minutes to come back up. That's where I was going with that. I had some pizza for dinner. Last time I had pizza for dinner, I got up here and I talked about salad for a long time. I had pizza for dinner, and then, the iceberg salad that you get with the pizza. So I've been really good about trying not to eat things that will upset my gallbladder, but I could have eaten the kale salad I had in my office, but I had that for lunch. So kale salad twice in one day is a bit much even for me. So I had the pizza. Apparently one of my colleagues, when I talked about food and cooking, somebody in here asked my brother if I'm a good cook. He told me this last night, that somebody asked if I'm a good cook. He said, well, but she's a vegetarian. I did remind my brother that I do cook meat, actually. For family dinners and things, I will cook. Sometimes I will cook some meat, but I am actually a fairly decent cook. I like to cook. It makes me happy. It's kind of relaxing, and I like to stand in the kitchen and cook on the weekends and listen to the radio. I have a radio in my kitchen that's like the undermount radio, and it's the twisting dials. Came with the house. We bought our house from a gentleman named Leroy, and he built the house in the 60s. And after his wife passed away and she was in her 90s, he was moving to a retirement community closer to his grown children. And so he was selling his house. It was only a few months after his wife passed away, but the radio came with the house. And I think about Leroy whenever I look at that radio. He was a Marine. I know that because out in the garage, there's a pegboard with old jelly jars screwed in and used for nails and things are all in these little tiny jelly jars. So first of all, very economical, frugal, creative, good recycling. And the first tenet of recycling is to reuse. Reuse, reduce, recycle. You should reuse your things. Well, actually, reduce is probably the first. Reduce your consumption, reduce your waste, and then when you do have waste, reuse it. So Leroy reused his waste, his jelly jars, and he had them on the pegboard, and you can just unscrew the jelly jars, and there are the nails of various sizes and various jelly jars. But that's not why I know that he was a Marine. I know that he was a Marine because below the pegboard is this very nice, old, clearly made himself, sort of workshop table that has a vise on it and these real sturdy wooden drawers. And on them is a Marine Corps sticker. And so much about my house is very clear that it was built and designed by someone who's very structured. It's a very structured house. It's a square. All of the rooms are square. It's all
1 minute.
3 floors, the top floor, the middle floor, the bottom floor, bathrooms line up, very structured house. And I think that probably is reflective of the military training and background that dear Leroy had. He has since passed away. I've lived in my house it'll be 9 years this June, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And one day, a gentleman knocked on my door, total stranger, and he was visiting from out of town, and he was kind of just trying to see if maybe Leroy's family, somebody in the family, lived there. He apparently dated Leroy's girlfriend in high school 40 years ago, and he said that Leroy hated him. So he was a little hesitant to come stop by. but I guess curiosity got the better of him, and he did. And yeah, it's kind of fun. I mean,
That's your time,
thank
Senator.
you.
And you're recognized to close on your motion to reconsider.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I was saying it's kind of fun to know a little bit of the history about your house. The house that I grew up in, my parents still live in it. And actually, they purchased that house just before Senator John Kavanaugh was born. So I've lived in it almost my entire life because I am not, while I am Senator John Kavanaugh's older sister, just barely his older sister. So I've lived in that house for almost my entire life. But the neighbors that I grew up with in that neighborhood that lived next door to us and across the street, they lived there for the entirety until they passed away in their 90s. So we really knew the people that kind of founded the neighborhood, I guess you'd say. And my parents were the third owners of our house. The first owner were the people that built the house, and then another family lived there for not a very long time. And then my parents bought the house in 1980. And someone who grew up in the house, I think, came and testified here recently, because I believe they came up to my brother. They didn't come to me. They might have been in his committee and not mine. Another childhood memory of people who come to testify is the Foxes. So in South Omaha, there was a grocery store owned by the Fox family called Fox's. And we used to go through the alley at my grandma's house and go to buy the things at the grocery store. And they had a little pad of paper at the cash register, and you literally put it on the tab. So they had these little pieces of paper, and they had the little names, and they had Kathleen Kavanaugh's name, and we would go in. Of course, it wasn't hard to figure out who we were buying groceries for because it was a gaggle of redheads coming in from the alley. But we would go and we'd get the meat that Grandma was going to use for supper. She always called supper. The meat she was going to use to make supper, and maybe any other things we needed for dinner. And so we would go through the alleyway. My grandma lived on 39th and R Street. And so we walk through that alleyway and go to Fox's, and then we'd leave through the alleyway as well. And we never had to have any cash because we could just go up to the cash register and they would write down everything that we had on this little piece of paper. And I guess eventually, maybe once a month, she settled up her tab. But that's the only time I ever remember somebody having a tab. I mean, when you go out to a bar, you open a tab, but it's just for the evening, and then you close out your tab at the end of the evening. This is like an ongoing tab that my grandmother had. And that was 39th and R. And then we also had, our family had a bar down there across the street from St. Mary's Church. And on Sundays after church, we would go to the family bar because we're Irish and we're a cliche. So we go to church and then we would go to a bar. We used to have a big Christmas Eve party with my dad's side of the family. And we did we would always do the nativity. We would reenact the nativity. We still have the same costumes that we've used my entire life, over 40 years old, these costumes. They do not smell great. They're very musty, but we have these costumes that we use to reenact the nativity. And
1 minute.
When I was little, we would reenact the nativity in the basement of a bar. When my great uncle Red Munley, who, if you go downstairs to the gallery of pictures, you can find John Munley. And he was my Uncle Red. And he was in the legislature. I think it was in the not the 70s. It was in the 60s. Red Munley, Jack Munley was in the legislature. So Uncle Red owned Duffy's Tavern across the street from St. Mary's in South Omaha. And that is where we would spend our Christmas, in the basement of a bar. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like a call of the House.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
14 ayes, 5 nays to go under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senator Hunt, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. All unexcused senators are present. The question is the motion to reconsider. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
2 ayes, 41 nays, Mr. President.
The motion fails. Raise the call. Mr. Clerk for items. Senator Kavanaugh, could you approach, please? Mr. Clerk for an item.
Mr. President, priority motion, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh would move to reconsider the motion to bracket.
Senator Kavanaugh, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I have 10 minutes to open and then 2 times on the mic to talk and then another 5 minutes. So this should take us to cloture on this bill, I believe. Okay, so I'm struggling a little bit with a frustration of the decorum of the chamber. Not really a little bit. I'm struggling with the decorum of the chamber. It's just not respectful. It's just really not respectful. And I have been doing calls of the House today because it takes up a little bit more time. It allows me to sit down for a minute. But I am struggling because whenever I do a call of the House, the decorum in the chamber is very inappropriate. It's very inappropriate. And like, I get it. Like, I don't want to tone police people here. I'm toned policed by this body constantly. But it seems to be escalating into just no respect for the institution. It is unfortunate. It is unfortunate. I've talked about it a few different times. I also have not been doing roll call votes partially because I don't want to be putting that on the clerks to constantly be doing the roll call, but also because the decorum in the chamber when we are under call is so, in my view, unprofessional and disruptive that it would be almost inconsiderate to do a roll call vote because people are being so disruptive and inconsiderate. There seems to be a lack of value placed on the work that we are doing as represented in the behavior and decorum in the chamber. I mean, I get a little punchy after standing up here for nearly 8 hours talking. So I get that, but like it's been going since 9 a.m. I've been talking for over 7 hours and I'm just now like, okay, I'm tired of reading. I'm just going to talk off the cuff. I am getting a little bit more punchy. But the decorum in this chamber has been unprofessional and disrespectful all day. And I am not in a position of leadership. I don't view it as my role to talk about it, generally speaking, but I also don't see anyone in leadership standing up and talking about it on or off the mic. I don't see the people that are in leadership positions in the institution taking care of the institution by instructing those that are not behaving appropriately that this is not how we do things. And it seems today, after nearly 8 hours, it feels like this is becoming normalized. And that's why I'm saying something, because I really do feel like this unprofessional attitude and lack of decorum is becoming normalized. And that is why I really hope that people in leadership positions will do something, will step in, will have conversations, will not contribute to the problem, but will work to rectify it, to create a culture worthy of the legislature, a demeanor worthy of the legislature. We are embarking on serious business, and we should conduct ourselves as though we are dealing with serious business. And I think it is disrespectful to each other, to the institution, and to the staff, and to the people of Nebraska to do anything less. I 100% recognize that none of what I'm saying is going to resonate with a single person. The next call of the house, it's going to be like a frat house, sorority house, party house in here yet again. And I am upset knowing that, but that is the reality. That is the reality. Though, Mr. President, the next time people are hooting and hollering, you can gavel, even when we're under call. The only time I remember ever applauding for the passage of a bill was when it was Senator Chambers' last bill of his last year of a lifetime of service in this chamber, and the entire legislature stood up and applauded him. That is the only time I recall applauding a bill. Sometimes I really question, well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we are on LB 92. We've got 19 minutes left. This bill has a lot of other bills in it, and there was 1 hour of substantive debate on LB 92, a bill that has now 17 bills in it. 1 hour. I have been debating it for several hours, but 1 hour where this body sought to engage in an actual debate and conversation. And since that time, there's just hooting and hollering in these hallowed halls. So, LB 214 has a committee statement, and it looks like it's long enough for me to read if I read slowly enough for the remainder of the debate. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to attempt to get some light on here. I apologize if I am blinding anyone with that light. Mr. President, how much time do I have left on this?
1 minute, 10 seconds.
Okay. LB 214 was introduced by Senator
1
Slama,
minute.
by her aide. It is adopt changes to federal law regarding banking and finance and change provisions relating to digital asset depositories, loan brokers, mortgage loan originators, and installment loans. I look forward to reading this and learning more about it. LB 214 would amend a number of statutes under the jurisdiction of the Department of Banking and Finance. The bill would provide section by section as follows. Section 1 amends Section 8-135 of the Nebraska Banking Act, which authorizes minors to establish deposit accounts, to update a reference within subsection 3 to the Federal Electronic Fund Transfer Act, as the Act existed on January 1, 2023. Currently, January 1, 2022.
That's your time, Senator, and you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so I have this time, next time. So that's 10 minutes. That takes us to, and then I have my close. And then we probably are about at the time. Okay, Section 2 amends Section 8-141 of the Nebraska Banking Act, which sets the lending limits for the state chartered banks to update references with subsection 6 to 12 USC 1817A3, the federal regulation relating to filing reports of condition, as the regulation existed on January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022. Section 3 amends Section 8-143.01 of the Nebraska Banking Act, which governs loans to bank insiders, to update a reference within subsection 7 212 CPR 215.4A2. Just pause for a moment. Colleagues, if you do have one of the 17 bills in this package, you have 15 minutes to get in the queue to say any final words about your bill that you are asking all of us to vote for, relating to extensions of credit to benefit and compensation programs as the regulation existed on January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022, and to similarly update references within subsection 10 to 12 USC 18 and its impending federal regulation 0. As such, law and regulation existed January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022. I'm just looking here, and I really appreciate committee statements. I always read them, not always on the microphone, but I always read committee statements because I find them to be very helpful, informative, and the committee statements for this banking package have been exceptional. So thank you to the staff for that. They have been comprehensive, and I honestly would I am confused already by this bill. I would be lost in the woods if it weren't for this committee statement, so thank you. Although this particular one says January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022, about a million times, but I will carry on. Section 4 amends 8-157.01 of the Nebraska Banking Act, which governs automated teller machines, or ATMs, and electronic switches to update a reference within subsection 4 to the Federal Electric Fund Transfer Act as the act existed on January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022. Section 5 amends Section 8-183.04 of the Nebraska Banking Act, which authorizes the conversion of certain mutual savings associations to state-chartered banks to update a reference to 12 CPR 5.21, the federal regulation.
1 minute.
Thank you, governing capital requirements for these associations, such regulations existed on January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022. Section 6 amends Section 8-1, 140 of the Nebraska Banking Act, which is the wild card statute for state chartered banks. That's a little bit of whimsy you threw in there. A wild card statute. Senator Slama, did you know that your staff was so whimsical? This section is being amended to provide that state chartered banks have the same rights, powers, privileges, and immunities as federally chartered banks doing business in Nebraska as of January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022.
That's your time, Senator. You're next in the queue, and that's your last time before your close.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. President. Due to state constitutional restrictions on delegation of legislative authority, the statute is amended annually. Section 7 amends Section 8-318 relating to consumer accounts in building and loan associations to update on a reference within subsection 1C to the Federal Electronic Fund Transfer Act as of January 1, 2023, currently January 1, 2022. Okay. Section 8 amends Section 835, which is the wild card statute for state chartered savings associations. This section is amended to provide that state chartered savings. I do see that the chair of the committee and the introducer of the bill is in the queue, so I'm going to yield my time and I'll get back. Well, I'll speak on my final time if that is necessary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Slama, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are in the closing minutes of LB 92, and I'd just like to take a moment to thank everybody for sticking around this morning and this afternoon and evening. Just a quick review of where we're at. LB 92 currently, as its amended, has 17 bills. LB 92, LB 145, which, as we talked about, Senator Bostar's mammography coverage bill, Senator Bostar's colorectal cancer screening bill, that's LB 383, Senator Ballard's 437, which changes the renewal period for business entity licenses under the Insurance Producers Licensing Act, LB 779, which is Senator Bostar's insulin bill, which is a wonderful bill. LB 392, Senator Ballard's bill to authorize the electronic delivery of certain health benefit plan documents. LB 536, which is my bill to amend provisions in the Insurers Investment Act. LB 68, which we did have a good discussion about today, which increases the amount of liability coverage that must be carried by physicians, CRNAs, and hospitals to qualify for the excess liability fund coverage under the Nebraska Hospital Medical Liability Act. LB 587, which is Senator Wishart's insurance regulatory sandbox bill, which has been years in the making. LB 93, which changes some of the mandatory security deposit statutes. LB 3, introduced by Senator Sanders, that sets a deadline for reporting bond elections to county assessors that mirrors the deadlines for reporting annexations for the purpose of allowing assessors ample time to build a new tax district in the case of a recent bond initiative. Actually solving a problem that happened in my district, the Palmyra School District, a year or so back. LB 207, which is Senator Von Gilleran's bill, which amends the Nebraska Trust Deeds Act. LB 214, which is the mainline banking bill. LB 669, which is Senator Ballard's bill to provide powers to the Director of Banking and Finance to prescribe conditions on banks, trust companies, credit unions, building and loan associations, savings and loans associations, and digital asset depositories through the Nebraska Banking Act, the Credit Union Act, and the Financial Innovation Act. LB 674, as introduced by Senator Jacobson, to amend provisions of the Nebraska Financial Innovation Act, so cleaning up the crypto bills that we've passed in the past. And Senator McDonald's chip bill, and also Senator Walz's Olmstead Act bill as well. So we've got 17 bills. This is the first Christmas tree of many that I think we're going to see. I'd like to thank the speaker for getting this on the schedule and helping coordinate, my wonderful Banking, Commerce, and Insurance Committee members, and also my outstanding staff. This bill keeps our government running and in federal compliance, and it's also going to save lives. These bills are overwhelmingly consent calendar worthy, except for in a few cases, and on all of those bills, we discussed them today. And with that, that closes out everything I have to say about LB 92. So in the spirit of the Christmas tree bill being considered tonight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Thank you, Senator Slama. Senator Kavanaugh, you are recognized to close on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Slama, for that recap. And you should compete in some like national speed reading, because getting 17 bills described in 5 minutes, that is actually extremely impressive. Okay, so lots of things in this bill, lots of really great things in this bill. Some things that I'm probably personally not super crazy about, but overall, as Senator Slama said, this is a very strong package of some great things to help with cancer treatments, access to healthcare. I think I spent like 2 hours talking about Senator Boastar's bill, LB 779, and insulin. And so I do look forward to this bill moving forward and the great things that it can bring for healthcare in Nebraska. I think it's also been a really good conversation when others have engaged in the conversation about healthcare in Nebraska. Looking through the testimony in all of these bills and seeing just how much the legislature is not just the 49 people in this room. It is so much more than that. We've got, of course, the staff, the committee staff, and the committee staff for this committee sitting here that works on just this bill, which is 17 bills. But then there's the people that showed up, to testify. We have state agencies that showed up to testify. We have advocacy organizations that showed up to testify for these bills. We had individual citizens showing up to testify for these bills. And to take that and move it forward in a way that is is good for the state, is strong public policy, is something that we should all be really proud of. It's good that we are able to come together on these important issues to carry forward strong public policy for the state of Nebraska. At the start of the day, the committee council sent out, or just, I guess Senator Slama distributed the committee council summary of all of the bills, and it was distributed by the pages on our desk. I think I have this here. It was 26 pages, 26-page document of all the things that are in this bill. That is some really comprehensive work. But in addition to that document, there's also committee statements for any of the bills that were voted out of the committee in addition to being amended into this package. That is a lot of work. That is a lot of work. So I am grateful to the staff for being able to put all of this together, because that is a significant, it's part of the historical document of the legislation that we are passing, but it is also part of just the work product here and how this is so much greater than just 49 of us. That what we accomplish as a group of 49 is so
One
much
minute.
more, thank you, so much more than all of us. It is a real community. We are a unique legislature in that we are a unicameral. And in being a unicameral, we are able to accomplish more things in a more significant and substantial way than other states do. And we are able to take on greater challenges together. Our uniqueness is our strength. And I just am very grateful to be here in service to the state. I'm also very tired, just very tired. And I am about out of time on my closing, and I think then we will have a cloture vote on this and go work our way through the board.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is the motion to reconsider. Senators, all those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
36 nays, Mr. President, on the motion to reconsider.
The motion fails. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Slama would move to invoke cloture pursuant to Rule 7, Section 10 on LB 92.
Senator Slama, for what purpose do you rise?
Call the House and roll call vote, regular order.
There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
35 ayes, 2 nays, place House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senator Day, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. All unexcused members are now present. Members, the first vote is the motion to invoke cloture. All those in favor, roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Aguilar. Voting yes. Senator Albright. Voting yes. Senator Arch. Voting yes. Senator Armendariz. Voting yes. Senator Ballard. Voting yes. Senator Blood. Senator Bosson. Voting yes. Senator Bostar. Voting yes. Senator Bostelman. Voting yes. Senator Brandt. Voting yes. Senator Brewer. Voting yes. Senator Breezy. Voting yes. Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting yes. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Voting yes. Senator Clements. Voting yes. Senator Conrad. Voting yes. Senator Day. Voting yes. Senator DeBoer. Voting yes. Senator DeKay. Voting yes. Senator Dorn. Voting yes. Senator Dover. Voting yes. Senator Dungan. Voting yes. Senator Erdman. Voting yes. Senator Frederickson. Voting yes. Senator Holleran. Voting yes. Senator Hansen. Voting yes. Senator Hardin. Voting yes. Senator Holdcroft. Voting yes. Senator Hughes. Voting yes. Senator Hunt. Voting yes. Senator Eibach. Voting yes. Senator Jacobson. Voting yes. Senator Kauth. Voting yes. Senator Linehan. Voting yes. Senator Lippincott. Voting yes. Senator Lowe. Voting yes. Senator McDonald. Voting yes. Senator McKinney. Voting yes. Senator Mosier. Voting yes. Senator Merman. Voting yes. Senator Raybold. Voting yes. Senator Reapy. Voting yes. Senator Sanders. Voting yes. Senator Slama. Voting yes. Senator Vargas. Voting yes. Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes. Senator Walls. Voting yes. Senator Wayne. Voting yes. Senator Wishart. Voting yes. But it's 48 days, no nays, Mr. President, on the motion to invoke cloture.
The motion to invoke cloture is adopted. The next vote is on the adoption of F. The next vote is on the entire committee amendment AM 484. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
46 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the committee amendment, Mr. President.
The next vote is on advancing LB 92 to ENR initial. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
46 ayes, no nays on advancement of the bill, Mr. President.
Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, turning now to final reading. First of all, I have a motion from Senator Hunt to recommit the bill with a note she wishes to withdraw. In that case, Mr. President, I have nothing further on the bill.
The first motion is to dispense with the at-large reading. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
40 ayes, 4 nays, dispense with the at-large reading.
The at-large reading has been dispensed with. Mr. Clerk, please read the bill.
Gross Legislative Bill 296, introduced by Ballard 21, a bill for enacting new insurance amendment, Section 44.312, reissue revised statute, Nebraska adopt the Pet Insurance Act, change provision relating to reimbursement rate for telehealth service, provides a defined term, requires the use of distinct national provider identifiers, prescribed, provides operative date, repeals the original section.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 775 pass LB 296 pass providing for the submission of such proposition? The question is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
Voting aye, Senators Aguilar, Albright, Arch, Armendariz, Ballard, Boston, Bostar, Bostman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, John Kavanaugh, Clements, Conrad, Day, DeBoer, Decay, Dorn, Dover, Duncan, Erdman, Frederickson, Holleran, Hanson, Hardin, Holcroft, Hughes, Ibach, Jacobson, Calif, Linehan, Lippincott, Lowe, McDonald, McKinney, Mosier, Merman, Raybold, Reapy, Sanders, Slama, Vargas, Von Gillern, Walls, Wayne, Wishart. Not voting, Senators Michaela Kavanaugh, Hunt, and Blood. The vote is 46 ayes, no nays, 2 present not voting, 1 excused not voting, Mr. President.
LB 296 passes. We will now proceed to LB 775.
Mr. President, LB 775. First of all, Senator Hunt, I have a series of motions with notes that you wish to withdraw. Additionally, Senator Lowe, I have a motion with a series of motions with notes that you wish to withdraw those. And Senator Conrad, the same. In that case, Mr. President, that's all I have on the bill.
The first vote is to dispense with the at-large reading. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
40 yeas, 40 days dispense with the at-large reading.
Mr. Clerk, please read the bill.
Gross Legislative Bill 775, introduced by Lowe, 37, Brewer, 43, Hardin, 48, Holcroft, 36, Hughes, 24, bill for not relating to gambling, amendments section 2, 1205, 9204, 920404, 601, 603, 606, 7, 64601, 651, 1103, 1106, 1110, 3717, 3720, reissue revised statutes to change provisions relating to horse racing, the Nebraska Bingo Act, Nebraska County and City Lottery Act, the Nebraska Racetrack Gaming Act, the Nebraska Visitors Development Act, and repeals the original section.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 775 pass? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
Voting aye, Senators Aguilar, Albright, Arch, Armendariz, Ballard, Boston, Bostar, Bossman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, John Kavanaugh, Clements, Conrad, Day, DeBoer, Decay, Dorn, Dover, Dungan, Erdman, Frederickson, Holleran, Hanson, Hardin, Holdcroft, Hughes, Ibaugh, Jacobson, Cowth, Linehan, Lippincott, Lowe, McDonald, McKinney, Mosier, Merman, Raybold, Reapy, Sanders, Slama, Vargas, Von Gillern, Walls, Wayne, Wishart. Not voting, Senators Michaela Kavanaugh, Hunt, and Blood. Vote is 46 ayes, no nays, 2 present not voting, 1 excused not voting, Mr. President.
LB 775 passes. Now, okay, while the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business, I propose to sign and do hereby sign legislative bills 296 and 775. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Mr. President, select file legislative bill 565. I have E and R amendments, Mr. President. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh to move to bracket legislative bill 565 until June 1st, 2023.
Raise the call. Senator Kavanaugh, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, well, now we've passed 3 bills. So LB 565 is the bill that I previously spent a significant amount of time on, and it was my intention to spend a significant amount of time on it again tonight. So I have this motion to bracket until June 1st. And then, so I could do my 25 minutes on that. We have the ENR amendments, so I can do 15 on that. And then I see that Senator Bosselman has an amendment to the committee amendments. And so I could spend another 15 on that. I can do a motion to reconsider the vote on all of these, which is another 25, 25, 25. But, and I haven't spoken with Senator Bosselman about this, but it was brought to my attention by Senator John Kavanaugh that there were these amendments and that Senator Bosselman would like to get to them. And as such, and being a good colleague, I am going to withdraw my motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
The motion is withdrawn. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, I also have MO 653, 652, and 651 from Senator Hunt with notes that she wishes to withdraw.
They are withdrawn.
In that case, Mr. President, I have nothing further at this time.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the ENR amendments to LB 565 be adopted.
For adoption of the motion, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. It's adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Bostelman moved to amend with AM 1314.
Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, colleagues. AM 1314 contains the provisions of the following 5 natural resource bills, all of which were unanimously voted out of committee. You have LB 217, introduced by Senator Hughes, extends the sunset date for the scrap tire recycling program. LB 395, introduced by Senator Erdman, increases compensation for members of the Oil and Gas Commission from $400 to $500 per day and allows for wages to grow based on the Consumer Price Index, and this increase has no general fund impact. LB 400, as amended by AM 878, introduced by Senator Brewer, allows for the taking of nest predators and mountain lions. And LB 289 and 425, introduced by myself, which I'll explain in more detail. LB 289 was brought to me by the staff of the Municipal Agency of Nebraska. The MEAN requests the Attorney General opinion on whether or not MEAN could assist with advanced metering. The opinion surprised them, as the Attorney General said it was unclear and that they should seek legislative clarification. MEAN would like to be able to provide standard utility services such as advanced metering, enhanced physical security, and helping small towns with their information technology. All 3 of these services are forward-looking and are important pieces to modern utility practices. MEAN would limit these normal utility services to publicly owned utility systems for its members. MEAN questioned the rest of public power providers like power districts and municipalities and found that many are providing these authorized services for their members today. This bill clarifies that MEAN has authority to provide services similar to what public power districts and municipalities are already providing. And LB 425 is a game and parks bill, which updates several sections of Chapter 37. The first being to increase a quorum for the Game and Parks Commission from 4 members to 5, as they have a 9-member body. LB 425 also increases the caps on non-resident fees for several hunting and fishing permits. The caps do not create an automatic fee increase. Those require a full promulgation of regulations by the agency and approval by the governor. The increases in caps are listed in the committee statement for LB 425. The bill also clarifies that if an individual receives an auction permit for mountain sheep, it does not count against the individual's lifetime total of 1 mountain sheep. Further, the number of people allowed to apply for a special permit in one application is increased from 2 to 6. Next, the bill adds language so that the Game and Parks Commission can put limitations on non-resident permits in an order for a special depredation season for deer, antelope, or elk. This change would not affect non-resident landowners seeking a permit. LB 425 also increases the maximum area allowed to be licensed as a game breeding and controlled shooting area from 2 to 5% of the county's total acreage. And finally, the bill would allow the Game and Parks to issue permits to harvest elk. Currently, only deer are in areas of the state designated as game refuges. When the number of elk has been determined to be detrimental to the habitat of the refuge or to adjacent privately owned real or personal property. All bills in this amendment were voted out of committee with 8-0, and I would ask for your green vote on AM 1314 and LB 565. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bostrom. And Mr. Clerk, for a motion.
Mr. President, I have MO 649 from Senator Hunt with a note that she wishes to withdraw that as well.
It's withdrawn. Returning to the queue, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Bosselman yield to a question? I wasn't at my desk. I couldn't write down all the bill numbers.
Senator Bostrom, would you yield to a question?
Yes.
Senator Bosselman, could you repeat what bills are in AM 1314? Just the numbers are fine.
Sure. Let me get my book back out. So 1314, LB 289, LB 425.
289, I'm sorry.
289 is the first one.
Okay.
425.
425.
400.
400.
395.
395.
And 217.
217. Thank you, Senator Bosselman. So colleagues, I moved aside what I'm doing to allow AM 1314 to be brought forward, and it has 5 bills in it on select file, circumventing the general file process. It does feel like the least that can be done by the introducers of those 5 bills is to speak about your bill. You don't get to speak about it on final reading. You didn't have it on general file. This is very unusual, even though it's becoming the regular. But seriously, speak about your bill. Take 5 minutes and speak about your bill. People are watching us. People are out there listening to us. If you're not going to speak about your bill, then I'm going to go back to doing what I'm doing, because clearly there's not any respect for the institution or anything if you can't be bothered to spend 5 minutes telling the rest of us what your bill is. I got myself in the queue again because nobody was in the queue, and if I wasn't in the queue, we would have gone to a vote on this without any of the introducers of any of these bills saying a single word. I get it. This has been an unusual session, but come on. Conduct yourselves like the legislators, like the statespeople that you are. Talk about your bill, tell us what it is, give us an opportunity to ask you a question if we have one. Don't just leave it up to Senator Bosselman to do it quickly in his opening on the amendment. I will get myself out of the queue. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. Senator Hughes, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of AM 1314 to LB 565. AM 1314 contains LB 217, which I introduced. LB 217 allows the continuation of grants for new scrap tire projects here in Nebraska. Each year, the state of Nebraska collects $1 from every tire sold, from which the proceeds annually fund $1.5 million in scrap tire projects through grants from the Scrap Tire Management Program. Fees collected in excess of $1.5 million are used to fund grants from the Waste Reduction Recycling Fund. LB 217 extends the current availability for the new scrap tire projects from their current statutory end of June 30th, 2024 to June 30th, 2029. Why does this matter? The dollar per tire sold fee will continue to be collected past the date of expiration of those scrap tire project grants. And it is important to continue to support the scrap tire projects, which include, but are not limited to, partial payment for purchase of tire-derived products or crumb rubber for use in playgrounds, mulch products, athletic track surfaces, artificial football or soccer fields. It can be used for the setup of collection site cleanups for local communities, such as Scrap Tire Amnesty Days. It can be used for capital and startup costs for processing, manufacturing, collecting, and transporting tires for purposes of processing scrap tires into crumb rubber and producing rubber modified asphalt, or the collection and transportation of scrap tires to a recycling site or facility. Colleagues, we simply don't have enough trees in Nebraska to place tire swings in to deal with all our scrap tires. So we need to continue this program as it was intended when it was first authorized 20 years ago. Please greenlight AM 1314 and LB 565. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Senator Erdman, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon or evening. My bill starts at section 33, page 16, and it deals with the Oil and Gas Commission. Those of you who were here a couple of years ago may remember that we did raise the compensation for the Oil and Gas Commission. Let me be very clear when we start. They do not receive tax dollars. These funds are collected from those people who are in the oil and gas business. Maybe the best way to describe it, it's a checkoff. So several years ago, when I was in Sydney delivering sweet corn to the retirement center, I stopped at the Oil and Gas Commission to visit with the commissioners. And they had shared with me at that time that their compensation was $50 per meeting. And I asked them, when was the last time you had an adjustment? And they said 1954. And so I came back to the legislature in the fall, in the spring, in the winter, and we introduced a bill to raise their pay to $500. Senator Hughes, Dan Hughes, also introduced a bill to change their compensation to $300. So he and I had gotten together and we negotiated $400, and that's what it was. But the provision that we placed then was that they could not exceed $4,000 of compensation annually. In the meantime, the commission received a $25 million grant to clean up and restore old well sites, old oil well sites. They received a grant to do that because the oil well companies had gone out of business and had not cleaned those sites up. And they had met numerous times during the year accomplishing that operation. So they vastly exceeded the $4,000 maximum. And so this year I introduced a bill. The bill would say would give them a $500 per meeting compensation, and it has no limit. So that way, if they get a grant again to clean up oil well sites, they have the money to do that, and they'll be compensated for it. And we've also connected that to CPI so that as the inflation carries on and things go up, they'll have an opportunity to get a raise and they won't have to wait 54 years for another adjustment. So that's basically what this bill does. And as I said at the start, this is the compensation is coming from the people who do oil and gas business. They don't get any compensation from tax dollars. So that is the explanation of Section 33, the Oil and Gas Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Brewer, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, colleagues. I need to start by thanking the Natural Resources Chairman for advancing my bill as a part of this combined package. My original bill was LB 400. That is now part of a package. The language for my bill is now part of AM 1314 to LB 565. Specifically, my bill is now Section 31 of AM 1314, beginning at the end of page 13 and page 14. This bill makes a change in the law concerning how farmers and ranchers deal with mountain lions that are killing their livestock. Under the law now, only the landowner may defend the livestock if they're witnessing a lion stalking, menacing, or killing their livestock. What my bill does is add employees or tenants of the farm or ranch to the list of personnel that are authorized to defend the livestock from mountain lions. If a mountain lion is killed during the process, the rancher or farmer is still required to contact the Game and Parks Commission to report the incident, and they will also take possession of the animal. This bill is not about a hunting permit, but only the defense of livestock. So again, bottom line is this simply clarifies the language of the law that states who may protect livestock from mountain lion attacks. My bill adds tenants of the farm or ranch owner and hired hands. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Bostoman, you're recognized to close on AM 1314.
Thank you, Mr. President. And there is a handout that is being distributed by pages to everyone on your desk that does give a brief on all the bills that we just talked about. My apologies with miscommunication with my other senators there. I do ask for a green vote on AM 1314 and the underlying bill LB 565. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1314. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
38 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the LB 565 be advanced to ENR for engrossing.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say aye. All those opposed, nay. It is adopted. Mr. Clerk for items.
Mr. President, single name add, Senator Blood, name added to LB 775. Finally, a priority motion. Senator Dorn moved to adjourn the body until Wednesday, April 19th at 9:00 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.